So much to get through in advance of the Belgian Grand Prix. It's the last race before summer break, the last race before basically the last weekend in August, which is kind of crazy to think, Tim. And listen, I have to start this episode by calling myself out. Because from time to time, Tim Haraney, and I do this on my other shows too sometimes, where I'm listening to an answer and then I'm queuing up the next segment. And I repeated something that you had said, and I've done this so many times, and I was like, wow, I'm such an idiot. And I know the comment section called me out, and rightfully so. So I just wanted to come out and apologize. I am trying to get to the next thing while Tim is explaining things. And, sometimes I just got to be a better listener. So I apologize, Tim.
No worries, Adam. I picked up on it, but I didn't want to say it.
I appreciate it. Honestly, Steve and Jesse usually go, hey, we just said that, idiot. So, you can do that too. That's fine. I do appreciate the fact that you tried not to embarrass me. I merely embarrassed myself. And that is, that's just the way I live my life, Tim.
Try not to be too much of an embarrassment zone around here. So, we are most of the time.
Hey, we do our best. We do our very best. Now, we were going to record earlier this morning, and it's interesting. We had to wait because of a bit of a tech issue until after the FIA press conference, and it turned out that was a good thing. So something, Tim, that you've been talking about, we've got plenty of things to get to.
Oh, yeah.
Something you've been talking about, though, for probably just after Monaco, you started mentioning this. Actually, before Monaco, if I remember correctly.
No, you're right. Just after Monaco.
Just after Monaco.
Yep, you're right.
Esteban Ocon and Haas. And it is official. It's been rumored for weeks. It's been a poorly kept secret, but it is official. It will be Oliver Bierman, and it will be Esteban Ocon for Haas, or MoneyGram Haas F1 next year. Now, this is a multi-year deal, which in hockey terms for me, and that's my background, is a multi-year deal is like 3-4 years minimum. Formula One multi-year deals can be just 2.
Yeah,
and
sure.
You never know the full contract length, but it is more than 1 year. It's not some sort of tryout deal. Esteban's a good racer. Io Komatsu was his former race engineer, I believe, at Force India.
Was that Lotus?
Lotus. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's right. He raced for Lotus. And
did a test at Jerez, I think it was.
So that's kind of cool. So let's talk about how this deal came together. And from a Haas perspective first, Esteban's perspective makes a little bit more sense. Why Esteban Ocon? Why now? What was this partnership? What was the excitement from Haas's point of view here?
I guess I'll start when I found out, because it was right in the midst of ironing out the finer details of the deal, really. Mm-hmm. And that was just after Monaco. And I think I texted you as soon as I had gotten word that this was pretty much in the works and was going to happen. I think for Haas, they're getting a race winner, obviously. I mean, they never had a race winner on their team, and that's no offense to like Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Grosjean, Schumacher. It's
a little offense to Mazepin.
Well, I mean, it's just a fact that, like, for Esteban, he's really young still too, and Formula One is starting to really turn into a young person's game. And for Esteban, he's got a lot of experience that he can bring to a team. He can help Ollie Berman with some things. That's important for Haas and for Ferrari as well, is that Berman gets up to speed and does have some success in Formula One. But at the same time, I think for Esteban, he appreciated the fact of how they approached him. He appreciated the fact what Io Komatsu had to say about him, why he felt like he needed him on the team. And I think for Esteban, it was the fact that he was wanted somewhere, like that a team actually really wanted him. And that's important for a driver. I mean, you could go to a Williams and, race there, but if they're not really coming after you and you're having to go after them, I mean, it's difficult for a driver to feel totally comfortable with the team. It always makes you feel nice when someone's, when a team is trying to chase you and get you on their side for driving purposes. I like the signing, Adam. Like I like Esteban. I think he is a very skilled racing driver who's never got everything that he's always needed from a team. I like the fact that for Haas, they've been really smart with how they've done their upgrades this season. You know, in the past, they've brought upgrades to their cars and they've just never worked, like ever. And for this iteration of Haas, and this season, I mean, they've done well with their upgrades. Like everything seems to have worked. They've implemented them at the right time, not just having one massive upgrade throughout the season, it not working, and then having to revert back to older stuff. For them, they've been able to improve and progress the car. And we're starting to see that in the on-track performances from both Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. I think for Esteban, that's sort of like the icing on the cake in terms of like the team is really trying to be competitive. And we've really gone after Haas sometimes on this podcast. I know I have for sure, and some points deservedly so. But at the same point, they've really done a great job this season of getting everything on track. And I would say from the team aspect, the team, the workers, everyone who's at the track side, they really work hard. They've always worked their asses off at that team. It's the decisions that get made off track in the offices, higher management, so to speak, that I've always sort of questioned. But for this season, I mean, things have really turned. They've really turned a page, and let's see if it keeps going. Let's see if it keeps going that way, Adam. Like to sort of cut you off.
Why has it been that way?
Again, right? Like I think it just comes down to having like Ayo Komatsu is steeped in racing, right? Like this is a guy who's an engineer. He's been through it. He's been through racing teams, clawed his way to the position that he now has. And I think, and this isn't anything against Gunther Steiner, but he has a more technical background, and that's important. And it looks like when we look at team principles that are really starting to take over teams and the trackside purposes and implementing upgrades, when do they get put out? We're starting to see, former engineers running these teams. I mean, Andrea Stella, James Vowles, Ayo Komatsu, etc. Mike Krack. Like it's just, we're starting to really starting to see that at teams. Frederick Vasseur, right? So I think that's your new Formula One,
Wow. Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Drive to Survive did actually a really sort of smart and creative thing last year with one of their episodes. They compared and contrasted Gunther versus James Vowles from Williams. And, basically the new school and the old school, where Gunther's having 3 coffees a day and James is like, I only have coffee on race days because that's where you get the full effect. I'm like, James, that doesn't sound like a fun life, James. James, just have the coffee. But, that's such a peek into James Vowles' character. And I find him, frankly, one of the most fascinating guys on the grid, just as an aside. I think James Vowles is endlessly fascinating as a human being. But, I think what's been interesting too with Haas is they've been very quiet, right? They haven't been obviously Gunther is a runaway star, still is, and maybe Gunther never gets back to doing a team principal or that sort of thing. And he's a commentator, and I think that suits both sides perfectly fine. We love having him on the media side; it's awesome. Io though, like the only quotes I really ever see are like if I'm actually searching out like the Formula One app to see the press conference, or I see like the Haas MoneyGram Instagrams, like what's Io said, what's Kevin said, what's Nico said, that sort of thing. They seem to have just been quiet and got down to business. And, for a team that really has had it the last 3-4 years, really, really taken some lumps, it's got to feel very good that they're going to get the incumbent Ferrari driver, the guy who is probably going to replace Lewis Hamilton if everything goes well, and Esteban Ocon, who's won races, who's been very successful everywhere he's gone. And he's another guy, Tim, that's clawed his way to where he is because, I don't believe he came from a very wealthy family, but I do know that he came from nothing. And he came and he also found himself out of Formula One for a year and found his way back in. Did he not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's something he knows.
Story.
Yeah, it's something he knows quite well, Adam. I think looking at being a part of the Renault driver development program for quite a long time, and when you've got someone like Toto Wolff on your side, who's kind of, helped him come back into Formula One at certain stages of his career, and that's really important. And it also speaks to the level of talent and the level that this driver can actually take things, right, Adam? And I think when you have someone like a Toto Wolff backing you, you can't really argue with that. I mean, Toto's not just going to go out and just back any driver, right? He's very selective in who he backs for good reason, because he knows talent when he sees it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so the question I think a lot of people will have is, okay, you got a young driver coming in, and it is Formula One. I think everybody's aware that your feelings are not safe, but Esteban's not been known to be the best teammate. He has been known to be very cutthroat with his teammates, whether that's fair or it's unfair. I can remember, what was it? There was like a tweet going viral from 2017 where he's like, well, Sergio Perez almost killed me, but
I remember that.
yeah. And I think Otmar Safnauer said at one point to them, I will break a component on your car so you guys have to replace it and you're 5 grid places apart. You guys are driving me crazy. And it's funny because Perez is known as a really nice guy. They can't stand each other.
No.
How do you think Haas managed that? Like, Beerman is still, I think he's still like 12th or 13th in points just from one race. Like, this is a very talented driver.
Yeah.
What do we think?
I mean, when the helmet goes on, right, Adam, you're a different person. It's just the way it is for a lot of us drivers. I mean, I think for Esteban, it's him having a clearer picture of what do I need to accomplish at this team to make sure that I'm either sticking around in Formula One for the long term, or I'm heading to a bigger and better team. Maybe this is a place where he can really show teams what he can do. I mean, tough being at Alpine. One season you're okay, another season you're really bad, another season you're good, and that's difficult for a driver to really express that talent that they have. And then at the same time, we had the situation with Esteban and Sergio, and I mean, he went up against Fernando Alonso, and he held his own. There were some tense moments and situations between the Alonso Ocon relationship, but I mean, that's going to happen, right, Adam? I mean, it wasn't anything like Sergio and Esteban. Like, it just there was no comparison.
And there's been some spicy PR moments too.
But I was just going to get to that. I mean, like, bringing Pierre onto the team and then hoping that two drivers that have already had a rocky past, really rocky, and hoping that, like, somehow being at the pinnacle of motorsports, they're just going to, like, break bread, and they're going to be best buddies, and they're going to get along. And that was built like years ago. Like, you're asking both of these drivers to kind of unbuild all of that and kind of get back to, like, or get going to, like, hey, like, we're going to work together for the team here, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they're competitors. There's just no way that was ever going to happen. I don't think they, like, hate each other, but they are competitors, and extreme competitors on the racetrack. With Beerman, it's a different situation. He's a rookie.
Yep. Right.
They know that he is going to be a priority for Ferrari to make sure that he's getting everything he needs. Mm-hmm. I think if Esteban can provide that, I think Ferrari is going to appreciate what Esteban would give to Beerman to help him. Is he going to let him buy for P1 on the racetrack? I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one.
But you know what? I guess that's a good problem to have. Like, oh man,
sure.
Oh man, our drivers are being competitive with each other because they want to win. How that sucks. Like it will be something though to watch. I think. Wherever Esteban goes, I would say that, right?
It'll definitely. It feels like it'll be a storyline wherever Esteban goes, right? It's something that's probably going to follow him for the rest of his Formula One career, at least.
Right. And, well, it's an exciting day. Who knew, Tim, 15 or 20 races ago, or whenever we started this, that Haas would be overhauling their driver lineup and that they would be this successful. It's been a heck of a year for them. Yeah,
it's a good point, Adam. I think it's a good thing for Haas. I mean, not to say that, having Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hulkenberg at the team is a bad thing. I think for Haas, though, it's a refresh. It's refreshing for them. I think also the trajectory of the team at the current moment is in a good place. Mm-hmm. And then who knows for 2026, right? Like, you're going to be getting parts, components, power unit from Ferrari, and then who's to say whatever the Toyota deal, if that ever turns into anything, let's see what that looks like, right? Mm-hmm. And then we'll see where it goes in terms of the chassis development. But I feel that they're not in a bad place. They've kind of really turned a corner, it feels like.
Wow, it's exciting stuff. Now, there's a lot more to talk about. I want to talk very quickly about before we get to the Logan Sargeant drama, the Max Verstappen sim racing stuff. Like, there's plenty of stuff to get to. The Deadpool Wolverine livery that's happening for Alpine this weekend. All the things. What I want to actually ask you about, Tim, is the changes to the track at Spa-Francorchamps that are different from last year. You kind of tweeted this out, but why are these changes important, and what are we looking for? Is it going to be huge for the viewer?
No, I don't. I think some of the bigger changes would be the pavement, like the repaving of the track. I think there are quite a few sections that have been repaved for this season.
What does that mean for tires?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that it's either going to do one or two things. It's either going to lead to some really great racing, or it's going to lead to really boring racing because of tire deg and everything. And so, but Pirelli is usually really good at doing their due diligence of going to the track beforehand, making sure they're choosing the right tire for the event, what they expect the deg to look like. Because, if you go back to Hungary, right, Adam, wow, the tire deg there, pretty severe. Really difficult to pass. Hot, and that didn't help things either with the racing. So if you're the lead car, that's the best spot to be in. If you're a P2 and you're 2-3 seconds behind, that's not a great spot to be in. So right. You're kind of stuck in that position. I think for here it's going to be a little more of a different story. Big, fast, wide open corners, long straights, repaving, right tire compound, I think, for this weekend as well. And I think also on top of all that, we have, 3 teams, possibly a 4th coming into Constructors' Championship contention. Verstappen's got to take a grid penalty this weekend due to power unit. That's something we talked about before. He would have to take one, and we said on here it was probably going to be a track like Spa.
And for people that don't know, how many places will that cost him, by the way?
I think he's probably on for a 10-place grid penalty.
There you go.
So
yeah,
it's a big one, right? But and who knows where he's going to be able to make it up, right? Let's say that the tire deg is extremely high this weekend. It could be a long race for him, right, Adam?
Right.
He may not score a lot of points. But who knows? He may score a lot, right? This is going to be a track, I think, that's going to suit Red Bull at the same time, right? They're going to be running the same configuration that they ran at Silverstone, so I've been told. So that's going to be the same setup. They did well there. They really excelled when they went to the hard tire compound at the end of that race. Obviously, Max probably would have won if that race was any longer, but Lewis Hamilton obviously coming away with the win. He slapped on those soft tires. It worked out well for him. But yeah, so I think, it'll be an interesting weekend. We're going to get a lot of action here. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, and that this is what's so great about this race course. I was actually looking up the weather this morning. Okay, because that's always a key in Belgium. And it's going to be today. It's raining, 24 degrees. Tomorrow, Friday, raining, 19 degrees. Saturday, 18 degrees and rainy. So that's going to be interesting because when on Sunday it's supposed to be a sunny day, finally,
God.
it's going to be 6 or 7 degrees higher. They're expecting between 24 and 26 degrees on Sunday. So the
Sounds like last year.
They're not gonna know what's going to work, really, right?
Yeah, they'll definitely have a difficult time figuring out what's going to work, right? If they can get a dry window in free practice 2, then they'll have a better understanding of what the tire does and goes through at this track. But again, right, like that's what makes it so challenging, is with all the changing conditions and teams having trouble really trying to dial in setup and understanding of what the tire does when you're on a long run.
Yep.
And Adam, it kind of really does sound like a lot like last year. I mean, last year was the same sort of weather conditions. I mean, if I remember correctly, Q3, the track was just starting to dry out when Verstappen took the pole there. And then obviously in the race, it was for the most part smooth sailing.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, Spa's interesting that way. It's got its own like weather climate. It's crazy.
It does. The Ardennes Forest, man. There's something about it. But that's what makes it special. And this is one of the best tracks on the calendar. Always look forward to this one.
Yeah, me too.
So Tim, let's chat a little bit about Red Bull, because obviously you bring up Max Verstappen, 10 grid penalty. Sergio 8th last week, which is better. But, as we mentioned on the last episode, Sergio can't be 8th. He needs to be in the top 5. Yeah. And Max, I expect to be able to climb back into the top 5. I expect, even if he's starting 12th or 13th, even if the McLarens beat him to pole, which there's no guarantees they will. He's still an incredible race driver, just maybe not the most dominant car anymore. I'm thinking that Red Bull, it sounds silly to say at this point, but this has got to make or break Sergio Perez with Red Bull. No?
I agree. I think it's a big weekend for Sergio. And I mean, obviously, if Max does end up, taking that grid penalty with the new power unit components and parts, then I think this has to be the weekend where he needs to really shine. So, I mean, even if, let's say Max does get this grid penalty and gets pole, I mean, you're looking at, depending on all the components that are added, at this moment, it hasn't been released. And we don't know for sure. We haven't got full confirmation of it. You're looking at like a P11 start, maybe further back, could be a little bit more further forward, but again, still losing spots. For Sergio, this has to be the weekend where like he really steps up. Like this has to be his weekend.
Yes.
And the question will be, if like he goes on to start on the front row, let's say he wins, will that be enough to change Red Bull Racing's mind on the direction they want to go in post summer break? Because as we get closer and closer to this thing, it really does sound like it. Daniel Ricciardo could possibly be that driver who does come in and replace Sergio. Do
you think that that's a sincere possibility?
I think it is a possibility for sure, but I think there's nothing confirmed, obviously, right? There's, at this moment, speculation.
I know that, it was photographed that Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, and the 51% owner of Red Bull Global, and I forget his name off the top of my head. It's part of the Uvidya family, yeah.
Yeah,
yes, the Uvidya. Yes,
that'd be the Thai side.
That's right. They were meeting last week on the Red Bull rooftop there at their thing. So I wonder if that was discussed. Helmut Marko did say we'll talk about it during the break, but they're really not supposed to be talking during the break. So
yeah, I know it's an interesting one with Red Bull Racing, in respect that Helmut Marko. He was brought in to kind of run the driver program, and now it's kind of shifted to he's running the junior driver program, and Horner is kind of making a little bit more on the decisions in terms of drivers, going where within the Formula One team. And I think that's sort of all a part of that power dynamic inside the team. If they're having a meeting on at the Hungaroring and whatever, I'm sure there is a lot they got to talk about in terms of like marketing, sales. Like it's it's more than just like one thing that they would obviously be meeting over.
Right. And well, of course. And I would think that taking the grid penalty for Max this weekend directly corresponds with the fact that the Dutch Grand Prix is the first one back on the calendar when we come back. And so it kind of makes sense to do this now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think so. I thought that's a good point, Adam. And that could be a tough race for them too. Like, it doesn't necessarily look like that could be a track where, Red Bull could be strong, even though they were strong there last season. But I mean, obviously everybody is caught up, and McLaren is just
flying.
Man, they look awesome.
Let's talk about Max a little bit here, obviously Helmut Marko.
Sim racing, eh?
Oh, the sim racing! Oh my God! Now listen, I think it first off, it's so interesting watching Max Verstappen fans respond to the news that he won't be sim racing on weekends where they're racing. That Helmut Marko came out and said that because Helmut Marko does not stop talking. He came out and said that this week he didn't say, he kind of tiptoed around it. He didn't say it was a problem, but Tim, if it wasn't a problem, why is Max not allowed to sim race?
It wouldn't be a problem.
It wouldn't be a problem. Then what are we talking about? So it clearly is a problem. Just the media, they're not going to tell the media that, and I understand that. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of memes about Toto Wolff going, Max, we'll let you. Like, I want to ask what you think here. What do you think? I mean, this team has given Max, I forget, people are like, oh, Max has given Red Bull everything. Let's not forget that Red Bull's given Max everything too. Yeah. They gave him the most dominant car of the cost cap era.
For sure.
Probably just so far and away ahead of everything else. Like the last couple of years, it's been unbelievable how good that car's been.
Yeah.
And he's been allowed the latitude to do these things because the car is so dominant, it almost didn't matter. But what I think may have pushed Red Bull over the edge, and this is just from my outsider's opinion, so you tell me what you know. It was the radio messages. The radio messages seemed very terse between him and Jean-Pierre, and I want to get your sense on, is that what did it? Because Max's racing was really good last week.
Yeah, I mean, the optics, obviously, of it, Adam, are probably like an issue for sure. And I think some folks maybe made too much out of it that maybe they shouldn't have. But at the same time, I mean, you and I discussed this on here, and I basically said to you, for that's not something that I would personally do, because I would need my rest, need to make sure that I'm ready to go and compete and I'm in the right headspace. And that's, for me, making sure I get proper sleep. And for Max, who knows, right? I'm not Max. We aren't Max. So no one can say otherwise. Mm-hmm. But I think for him, he was quick to agree to the fact, there wasn't some
pushback.
No, there wasn't any pushback on it. He was pretty much, look, I'll do it, whatever. I think also his team had lost a driver apparently, I think, and that's why he had to do a double stint,
the early morning one.
It was. Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's not particularly something that I would have done, but if it's, if I don't know, if they feel that it's affecting his performance in any way, then for sure they've got to talk to him about it. But again, drivers are going to get, upset on team radio. That's just what it's going to happen. Whether or not he was up sim racing or doing whatever, you still are in a very high stressed, high pressured situation. And, I respect the fact that, he's going to snap back, right? It's his ass in the car. And sometimes I think when it comes to engineering in Formula One, it comes to the point where it's, for some drivers, it gets to be a bit too much. It's kind of stop engineering me so much. Let me just drive the car and listen to my feedback and what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
I think for Max in the situation at Hungary, and again, we discussed this last time out, it's the fact that, you're in a frustrating position. And if you're not going to be able to bring the tires in at the right temperature, I mean, it's just, probably him saying, F it, I'm just going to go for this. And
Yeah.
we're going to see what happens. And that's what he did. And who's to say if he doesn't have contact with Lewis, he doesn't end up finishing, P3, P2 even maybe, right? Like, so
no question.
So again, right? I mean, yeah.
I do want to say that I love that Red Bull are the only guys on the grid in the media anywhere who thinks that Lewis Hamilton was at fault there. I do. I love how they do close ranks around their guy. They wouldn't do that for Sergio, I don't think. But
I think like actually, you know what, Adam, I had heard like some pundits thought that it was a racing incident. I think everyone's going to have their own view on it. Honestly, man, I'm surprised Max didn't get a 10-second penalty for it, but because Lewis is committed to the corner. And if we go through that frame by frame, we can literally break down, like, if we're going to get serious and we're going to stick to the regulation. Again, I'm not huge on the whole rules of racing and all that stuff. Look, if it was totally egregious, then yeah, drivers should be getting penalties. But like, I like good hard racing. So
yeah, me too.
But I'm just going by the fact that, like, if we're going by consistency, which is something I always say when it comes to penalties, rules, if you're going to be consistent, be consistent.
Yes, apply them consistently.
That's just those are just my 2 cents on it. That's just what I feel.
Now, we've had some huge movement behind the scenes this week. Mattia Binotto, formerly of Ferrari, will be the Chief Operating and Chief Technical Officer at Sauber Motorsport AG, soon to be Audi. And essentially, this is can you explain this a little bit for people that don't necessarily understand? Because it's a very interesting move. Also coinciding with Oliver Hoffman and former McLaren team boss Andreas Seidel leaving the project, which is really surprising. What happened?
This is a huge move. I mean, I know some folks may look at it, either not understand it or not really care about it, but it speaks loud, very loud. And I think when you have someone of Mattia Binotto's experience and talent, bringing that to your team, it's very important. I mean, everyone may say, like, oh, he didn't do a very good job when he was running Ferrari. And I'm like, well, that's a whole other thing over at Ferrari. But at the same time,
he was also part of some pretty good Ferrari years.
Oh, 100%, man. He was a part of championship winning years, building championship winning engines. He's really good on that stuff as well. Considering we're going into a regulation in 2026 that is very power unit dependent at the moment.
Yeah.
And for Audi getting someone like that on your squad, that's big. I think behind the scenes, it sounds like there was power struggle between Andreas Seidel and Oliver Hoffman. And for those two to be, doing something like that, they're kind of at, one's high up on the board while the other one's sort of running the entire project. You can't have that. You can't build your team out like you want to. And I think for like the CEO of Audi coming in and getting involved, that's huge. I think that speaks to the fact, Adam, that Audi is really taking this thing very seriously, because on this podcast, I've been asked, right, like, hey, Audi pulling out of this project here? Are they going somewhere else? And I've always said, no, they're not going anywhere else. That's not going to happen, blah, 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 blah. This just cements the fact of how much involvement they are going to have and how serious they are taking this. On the flip side of that, when you have these two individuals leave, you have a person like Mattia Binotto coming in. I think for Sauber, that changes a lot of the dynamic. And it even changes more of the dynamic with the drivers as well, Adam. Like if we focus just on Valtteri Bottas, hearing from him earlier, he was just saying, like, this is a bit of a reset for him, like with the team in terms of the conversations of sticking around and staying.
Right, because I guess Andreas Seidel would have been the guy negotiating that,
yes,
right?
That he would have been one of the guys for sure. So this restructures that whole conversation. This changes everything because of Mattia coming in. Mattia could want him at the team, right? Moving forward, moving the project forward, right? Or he could not. But at the same time, for Valtteri, that's good. This is a good thing for him. And for Zhou Guan Yu as well. This is a reset for both drivers trying to stick around at the team, right? And I think when the things going on behind the scenes start to affect things trackside, so getting components to the car. Remember the pit stop snafu that they had at the beginning of this, ridiculous.
40-second pit stop or whatever it was.
It was ridiculous, and how long it took to get that, back on the right path. How long it's been taken to get big updates to the car, and where they've gone in the pecking order in the constructor standings, where this was a team that was was in the midfield. They were actually in 2022. This was a really good team. In 2023, it was pretty decent team, but then this season it's the worst car on the grid, the slowest car on the grid, and you have to wonder how much of all of the stuff happening in the background has affected everything that's going on the track.
Sure.
And so I think this is also going to change things for them as well. Binotto starting August 1st at the team. I think he's going to make some changes real quick, and so it's a big ship to turn. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take him a while to do it. I think it's smart that they do it now and not wait until 2026. I mean, this is, even though it's going to be a lot of work behind the scenes to get things going in the right direction, Adam, I think it was the right thing to do. The next step up is going to have to be trying to appoint a team principal. From what I've heard, Adam, that's that they want Mike Krack as on their team. Whether that's in a team principal or something else, but it remains to be seen.
That really just leaked last night. Mike Krack leaving Aston Martin would be a surprise. Why do you think? Obviously, it's understandable why they would want them. Although not, being a fan, like maybe you don't know as much about Mike Krack as perhaps an insider like yourself would know Tim. But why is Mike Krack so attractive? And is this a job that Mike Krack is responding positively to?
Sounds like it's been in the talks for the last few weeks. Now, I don't know if Mike has been informed about it. I don't know if they've reached out to him, and I don't know what his stance is. I can tell you my experience with Mike has always been positive. He, I think, he gives it to you straight, which I appreciate. I think he's a driver's team principal, which is also something that, for myself, I appreciate. Aston Martin, I don't know what their direction is with team principals. From my understanding, they like Mike. They're really happy with him, and they want him on the team. So at the moment, it's just rumors. Mm-hmm. But, who knows? We'll see what happens. I wouldn't even know, if Aston were to lose Mike, I mean, who could replace him, right? At the same time, right? Who could that be? I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I guess there's a notable Andreas Seidel available, but I'm not sure if he's the fit.
Good point. I mean, that's a good conversation, though, Adam. Because if we really hard to judge that one, because if think about it for a second, right? So Seidel leaves McLaren to take this big, huge position at the Audi project at Sauber. And Stella comes in, even though Stella had been working at the team for a long period of time. Stella comes in, restructures the way their technical department runs, allows the engineers to have more freedom with how they develop components, parts, allows there to be more of a fluid conversation with how that gets done. And look at McLaren, right? They get rid of James Key, who was one of the guys in charge of, building the car, getting it up and running, making sure that it's competitive. And I'm not saying that, James Key was a component to why they struggled, but if you look at how much has changed, where that team is now, they have the fastest car on the grid.
Yep.
You have to take your hat off to them for that. And then, Seidel moves over to do this Audi project, brings James Key over as well, and now they're really struggling at the back of the grid. Now, I'm not saying that's Andreas Seidel and James Key's fault. I mean, there's a lot of other people who are involved in getting a car to be quick. But at the same time, I mean...
They're in charge.
Yeah, they're in charge. And it's unfortunate because sometimes the people who are in charge aren't necessarily the right ones to have let go. But sometimes that happens, and that's Formula One. I would be interested to see who would want him on their team. Like, who would want him to either come in and be a team principal or, whatever, right?
Yeah.
What would you do? I mean, like, you're a huge McLaren fan. You follow them really closely. Like, all this stuff that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
like,
it's hard.
What would you do?
What's hard is that McLaren's success this year has been great. And it started midway through last year, right? Their success really started to pick up because they were back of the grid. It was going to be a painful year. And then all of a sudden, their Oscars winning a sprint race. And
Adam, last year they were one of the worst teams on the grid. They were the worst team on the grid starting off.
Yeah, and then by race 15, they're like right at the top. And it's hard for me to say that. I'm not trying to take away from Andrea Stella because it's very clearly him. Very clearly whatever the changes he made. But did the changes they made in 2022 to the car affect how successful they were in 2023? Because the car was a real disappointment in 2022. Andrea Seidel left. Andrea Stella takes over. I wish they didn't have the same first name because it's very confusing sometimes. Andrea S. Like, come on. Are you serious, guys? And James Key leaving is interesting too, because it's hard to know because Tim, you always talk about the fact that it takes about 18 months, right?
Yeah, it takes a while
to kind of kick in. So some of that has to be given. Some of that success has to be credited to them if we're going by that, right? If we're being honest about it.
Yeah.
Maybe they laid the groundwork. Maybe they never get there if those guys are in place, right? Maybe they just they're too limiting, they're too controlling. I don't know what the insider looks like, but to me, I look at what happened when Seidel was the head of McLaren, at least the last couple of years in this particular rules spot, and it wasn't great. I mean, they had that really good finish in 2021, I think. Was it 2020 or 2021?
2021, I believe.
Third place,
Monza.
Right? Yeah, well, they had the Monza thing.
Sorry, they had the Monza victory, obviously the 1-2 there, and then I believe they were finished P3 in constructors,
which is great, right?
I think it was 2020, Adam, and 2021, if my memory serves right.
Yeah, they were up.
You keep talking.
They were up there. No, but the point is they were up there, right? It doesn't matter. Okay, they weren't first, so they were in the top 3-4. That's amazing. That's great. So you kind of have to give them credit for that, but then you have to go look at, okay, the rules changed and you weren't ready for it. And so are you actually prepared for this set of rules? And then having him put it at a Sauber, for me, for them to just trade team principals doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit with, Aston Martin / Lawrence Stroll's vision for things. I feel like Aston Martin might promote from within, and that's without too much insight. It feels like maybe they've got somebody right under Mike if he were to go. But if I were Mike Krack and that rule had come out, I know Lawrence is probably flying to the racetrack this weekend. That's going to be an awkward conversation. It's like, imagine Lawrence Stroll brings you in and goes, "So are you leaving or what? What's the deal?" Like, that's fucking scary, man. So I don't know. I don't envy Mike Krack in this position. That's my way too long take on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And just confirm, 2020 McLaren finished P3 in the constructor standings, and 2021 McLaren finished P4, just behind Ferrari.
Yeah. So.
But again, competitive season, like those are good years. Those are good years for them. Yeah. For them, yeah. Especially in that regulation, those are.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when there was no cost caps and stuff like that, they were, in hockey we call them small market teams. McLaren were not a high budget team at that point, right? Like in terms of what Ferrari and Mercedes were spending. Yeah. so that's going to be very, very interesting with Mattia Binotto. What I wanted to come back to with him was, does that help or hinder their Carlos Sainz pursuit? Because Mattia brought Carlos Sainz to Ferrari. Is he the guy to bring him to Sauber and then Audi?
Very good point. I think it would. I mean, they have a relationship, strong one. I think for Carlos, it's the fact that, like, does he see proper future, like, moving forward there?
Yeah.
And who knows, like, maybe having, like, Mattia come in, maybe that's what really convinces Carlos to go there instead of somewhere else. His goal, obviously, is, and he put it to us, pretty bluntly today, is wants to be on a championship winning car next year. That's, very difficult that will happen. Mm-hmm. Sounds like there, could be a tiny little possibility. And I'm thinking that's Mercedes. But again, Mercedes is putting Kimi Antonelli back in the car after the Belgian Grand Prix. He's going to get some more time in the 2022 Mercedes, running some laps at Spa, I believe, in the weeks following the Belgian Grand Prix. But for Carlos, I mean, I think it would instill some confidence, right, having Mattia there. Mm-hmm. He's worked with him for quite a few years, so he knows, and he knows how he runs things, and he's got a lot of respect for him. So, yeah, I mean, could that change where Sainz ends up? I mean, it might.
Might, yeah. Interesting. I've got some other things that I quickly want to hit before we wrap up here. It's rumored and almost official that Alpine will go with a Mercedes power unit, but that it will be more than just the power unit. The rumor on the street, and I don't know if you've heard any about this, is that the Alpine apparently have talked to a lot of people, with Flavio Briatore said to be a key advocate that the team will be best served by taking a customer engine deal. Other manufacturers have been sounded out to see if there's any interest in getting a deal done. Apparently, the Mercedes partnership would include engine, gearbox, suspension, and could start as early as next year, although nothing's been signed. What do you think about that? And is that doable, feasible, and is that what you've heard?
Yeah, that's the rumor that's going around. And, Toto Wolff never, like, denied any of it. He actually embraced it. And I think I'd said this on here post British Grand Prix, was the fact that they would need a replacement for Aston Martin for 2026. Aston Martin obviously doing their deal with Honda. They're now going to be making everything in-house, including their own gearbox, that's a huge undertaking for them. It's going to be new direction, obviously. But for Mercedes, being able to replace Aston Martin, kind of get that revenue stream from another team coming in, I think, that obviously doesn't hurt. And if Alpine wants to go in that direction, I mean, sure. I mean, it would probably save them a lot of money. It would save Renault a lot of money. What does that affect? Like, how it's looking at it from the other side. It's, whose jobs does that affect? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a difficult conversation to have. I mean, it
does bring most of their facilities to England, right?
Yeah, definitely. It would definitely bring more things in house. Easier to get the car competitive, like faster. And then obviously working with a Mercedes, power unit is never a bad thing. I don't think.
Seems to do well.
They know what they're doing, right? So I mean, that'd be good for, like, on the competition side. It would be good for Alpine. But then it's like, I guess you look at, like, Aston Martin, right? Like, they don't make not yet anyways. Obviously, they don't make their own engines, and they're a car manufacturer. So I mean, Alpine would essentially be running Mercedes power units. There'd still be a car manufacturer, right? So
right. Okay, all right.
I guess you would just be losing that, Renault flavor. The Renault, engine and power. And
there is a history there.
The history,
they won world championships, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, yeah, going back to the Alonso days of the, the blue and yellow Benetton, that thing was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's right. That's a good point to make, Adam. It's just you're losing that history, I guess.
The flavor has been a little sour lately, though, and I think that's the thing. Is whatever it is that it might have been a situation where, and for anybody that's listening that doesn't know, Renault obviously / Alpine, they make their engines in France, but they have a British team that puts the rest of the car together, and there have been rumors of discord and poor communication between both sides for years, Tim. And I think that's, maybe that worked when you had no cost cap and Formula One was really fly by the seat of your pants, and you had a lot of independent owners, Williams, Minardi, the Force India team, and we're going back to even Lotus being on the grid and BMW being on the grid. It's right now, I think that everybody has gotten far more competitive. You look at what's happened with McLaren, when they got their wind tunnel online, boy, oh boy, have they off to the races. Mercedes, Red Bull.
Cost cap as well. It's been
cost
huge.
cap. Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari are always going to be competitive, but McLaren have really jumped back into the conversation in a way we haven't seen in about 12 years. And then you've got Aston Martin pulling everything in-house. Honda engines doing their own gearboxes. They've built a factory. They've doubled their workforce. I think they're from 200 or 300 to 600-700 now?
Oh, yeah, it's more than that. I mean, they went from
that's crazy,
just
Tim.
under 400 to now, you're getting close to 1,000. That's massive.
That's crazy.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of people. And this new factory, which you have toured,
Oh,
and then you've got teams like Williams that are resurgent. I do think, as much as they've stumbled this year, I think that's only a speed wobble for them. I do think there's a bright future for them. And then Audi's coming in. At a certain point, that split work. Maybe it worked years ago. It just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
And so unless they were going to move the factory for Renault out of France, which they never will, or move the building team out of England, which they never would because they may not have access to the same talent, doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, I agree, Adam. Yeah, good points.
So I know it's frustrating though, isn't it? Because there's so much history in it, right?
Big time. I mean, you miss it, right? I guess obviously things move on and whatever, and I get it. But at the same time, I mean, I guess just as a kid, watching Fernando win those championships in that car and all those, all the memories. I just remember that car, when I would go and race in some of the F1 undercards and going trackside, not a lot of people around at the time, but that Benetton just coming, Renault just coming screaming by you and just shaking the ground with that V10 engine. And it's just so awesome. And it's just, just good memories.
Screamers. They were all screamers, so those good, cars.
Man. Don't get me started.
I know.
We're going to be here for another hour talking about.
I know your favorite era of Formula One. I know. There's a couple other things too. Okay, so there was a rumor about Fernando Alonso and why he was throwing his jacket. And there was and I'm not sure if this has been confirmed or what you can speak to on it, but there was a Spanish reporter that talked about how Stroll and Alonso may have been put in Parc Ferme during Q3 after Yuki Tsunoda spun out and it was red flagged. And Fernando got out of the car. Did you see that?
Oh, was that the thing you
with the
sent
Apex
to me?
GP car?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so all right. So I think, but basically what happened was that in Q3 when Tsunoda had his, massive crash, Alonso was on his push lap, and I think he was coming close to finishing the lap off. I think he was only maybe almost into the last turn when they threw a red on it. I can't remember. I haven't gone back and looked at the data to see if he was up or down on his personal best, so I can't comment on that. But they threw the red flag, and when he was coming into the pit lanes, the FIA ordered him into Parc Ferme. And so I'm not too sure if there was a disconnect between sort of race control and the guys on the ground there, being if the session was going to be ended or how that sort of took place. But they Parc Ferme'd both Stroll and Fernando. Mm-hmm. Stroll wasn't on a push lap at the time. He was on a warm-up. But I remember, Fernando was about to get out of the car, and the team came running over, and the FIA was like, "Oh no!" Like you could see on Fernando's onboard camera that the FIA was trying to be like, "Oh, like we made a mistake here. Like, get back into the car, put the steering wheel on, let's get you buckled back in, and make sure you get out and get going." So they did do that, and Fernando did get back to the pits. And what happened after that, I'm not sure. I know that Fernando was upset afterwards about that.
Yeah.
And so him throwing his hat, throwing his jacket, I have a feeling it has something to do with being called into the Parc Ferme there. And I'd be upset too. Like,
it was speculated that the Formula One movie they're shooting, the Apex GP car, is in front of him when you look at his onboard. So it was speculated that perhaps they got Aston Martin and the Apex GP car mixed up, which I found hard to believe.
No, because they
white and green.
No. So the Apex. So yeah. So what happens with from what I have seen and experienced personally, whenever the Apex crew is around, they're running on the track in the off hours. So if there is if F1 qualifying ends, they're trying to run and shoot within a 15, maybe 20, maybe 30-minute block after that, or before it, or after like an F2 session or an F3 session to get the track time and get the shots. And they would never be out on the track like during a quali. Like,
right. Yeah,
never. Like,
that's
no
what I thought
way
too. I was like, that's
in hell
weird
that they would be out on the track during a quali. So that's why when I read that, I was like, what? Like, they're like, from everything I've seen, Apex gets their block of time to go out and run around. I mean, you see the fan videos of it, right? Like,
sure, of course,
they're online. Just go and look. I mean, that's what they get. And I'm not too sure what that reporter was writing about. I've never met the person either, so I can't.
No, it's not. You're not talking about
comment, so.
Yeah, it just didn't. No, I just wanted to get some clarity on that. Lastly, it was speculated on by all people. Marcus Ericsson, former Formula One driver, now IndyCar driver, that Logan Sargeant and James Vowles, who are no longer on speaking terms. Now, it's been speculated for a while that Logan Sargeant has a deal in IndyCar waiting for him once he's done the Formula One year, possibly with Prema. That was the speculation online. Again, speculation. Who knows? But Tim, what can you tell us about their relationship? Logan spoke about it this morning.
So he basically denied pretty much everything that Ericsson had said. I believe Marcus had said it to Viaplay, whether that was on their podcast or TV, I'm not sure. But yeah, Logan basically just saying look, I've never talked to Marcus Ericsson in my life, and he has never come to me to talk to me about it. So he's like, I'm not too sure why he's talking about me, essentially, is what Logan was saying. But yeah, Logan's still talking to James Vowles. He talked to him 20 minutes before he came and spoke to the media today. It's they're on speaking terms. Give me a break here. I don't know where Marcus got that from. That's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And frankly, it doesn't seem very productive that they're not talking. Like, if both sides are moving on at the end of the year, then what's there to be upset about? Right?
Yeah, but I mean, Logan, they both need to talk to each other. Logan's the one driving the car right now. They need to talk. They have to talk. And every time I've been around them, I mean, they appear to be,
fine,
on speaking terms. So I don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I think something in the article that I had read that Ericsson had said something to the fact that some American friends, I'm just paraphrasing here. It was some American friends had told him that Logan, that him and James were not on speaking terms or something to that ilk. I don't know, but yeah,
it's third party anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
unless you gotta go and talk to the driver, right? You gotta ask.
Typical Formula One though, it's one little clip of one little thing, and then it's blasted everywhere. And I have to say, Logan Sargeant has not done a bad job in qualifying the last few races.
Been all right, eh? I was saying, Adam, he's had had a decent season. He's caught up to Alex. I still don't believe those cars are equal. I don't think they've been equal all season. And Logan has done a great job. Like he's been right there. I think like things that Logan has to do, if you look at for being like if he were to be a 10th faster than Alex, then that would probably equate to less than a 10th because of maybe the discrepancies in the race car.
Wow.
So I mean, he's done well here. It's like, has he done well enough to earn a third year at the team? If you're James Vowles and you can get Carlos Sainz, you probably have to go and do that. If you can get Valtteri Bottas, you probably have to go and do that. And I wonder where Logan would stack up. Like, where would he be James's third option, fourth option? Like, I'd be curious to know that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. It's a Formula One, just a forever mystery on a lot of these things.
Yeah, and I don't know if Logan has his future secured at this moment. Like,
okay.
Like anywhere. Like I still don't think he's. I don't think, anyways. It's not anything that I know. I'm just going off a feeling here, but like I don't think he's signed anything anywhere.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. Like it doesn't seem like it. I mean, for him, like I think the priority's got to be staying in Formula One, right?
Sure, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
He's still got a lot of season left, so.
Well, and if he continues to out-qualify Sergio Perez, which he keeps doing,
yeah, and from
it's crazy.
Yeah, and from the Prima aspect of it going to IndyCar, they're still trying to get everything into a fully functioning race shop. I think for them, drivers are not the most important thing at this moment, and so like, when will that be? I mean, probably not going to be for a while. So that's why I think that, it's like, that's why I think he hasn't signed anything anywhere. That's where I'm coming from.
Right. That makes sense. I guess lastly, what did you think of the Deadpool Wolverine Alpine liveries?
Dude, looks great.
I like cool to have a movie star owner, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, Ryan Reynolds was just here. Like, I don't know if he's still in Toronto, but he literally was just here like yesterday.
Yeah, he did I think they
Hugh Jackman was here too. So was Sean Levy. They were all here.
They all did an appearance at eTalk in the parking lot where the old Much Music building is.
Oh, okay.
And they did because they did their New York opening and then they had their Toronto opening.
Right.
And I guess for that, Nickelback called in and stuff like that. So there is, and they didn't know that they were going to do that, which I thought is kind of neat, right? They did it outside in front of a whole audience, and that movie looks like it's going to be great. So,
are you going to see it?
Well, not this weekend, but I do want to go see it. One of the things that for me is like, I don't need to see a movie opening weekend. Like, I'm cool. Like, I don't need to. I'd rather wait till we're 3 or 4 weeks in and I can book my seats through the Cineplex app and then have space on either side and chill out with my wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good point.
So
yeah, you want to be in there like shoulder to shoulder with like other sweaty humans like watching.
But I understand why people do. Like when The Force Awakens came out and it was the first Star Wars movie in 20 years, I was like, I actually was working at Breakfast Television at that point as their entertainment reporter, so I got to see it before anybody else.
Nice.
But I would have been there opening night.
For sure. You're a fan, right?
Enormous fan.
Yeah.
Enormous fan. And like the Formula One movie, I think you and I will want to go see before.
We'll probably be there. Like, yeah.
Hopefully we can sneak into a screening or something.
Dude, imagine we got invited to a screening. That'd freak out. That'd be awesome.
Well, listen, maybe we need to call Cineplex and be like, hey, we're a couple of guys and we're big fans. No. Yeah. How do you feel about that in June next year? But anyway,
awesome.
Tim, enjoy your weekend and enjoy not having to do double duty in the same way this weekend. I'm sure you're still recovering from the Toronto Indy and of course the Hungarian Grand Prix at the same time. But you did a great job, man.
Thanks, man. I'm definitely not complaining. I had if I got to burn the candle at both ends, I got to do what I got to do, and I'll never complain about it ever.
At least it's racing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm getting to do something I love. So for me, it's not work, but for me, I just focus on like, I need to make sure I get everything right
Yes.
and I'm providing the fan with something maybe they don't know, and making sure I get that right as well is really important for me. And it's hard to be perfect, it just really is.
You make mistakes. It happens. Like I don't know if you saw what happened with Steve in the Major League Hockey announcement, which is the 3-on-3 league, and there was
you guys told me about that. Yeah.
It became like a whole thing. You're never going to be perfect, but I have to say, at this network, we've got a lot of people that care a lot about getting it right as much as they possibly can.
Sure.
You're one of them. And I want to say, I know you're going into TSN later today, and we don't talk about this enough on this show, that, you've been working at TSN for years and worked your way up there from a guy that cut highlights, right? I mean, it's amazing. Steve also used to cut highlights at TSN. You've really worked your way into a pretty incredible spot there. So what are you shooting this afternoon?
Oh man, I don't know if I can.
You say you can't say?
I want to so bad because
is it exciting and fun? And is it an interview?
It's not an interview. It's very exciting. It's going to be really wicked. It's something we've never done before. It's totally brand new. It's totally new for me too. It's going to be for me. It's going to be an incredible experience that I really want to do well at. But I've been working with some of the great producers there, on this project for the last, I want to say 4 days. We planned it 2 weeks ago, and I can't remember.
Very excited. Can you tell us at least really when it's about to come out? You don't have to tell us what the content is.
I think it's coming out Thursday night.
Okay.
If it doesn't come out Thursday night, it will be Friday.
So quick turnaround.
Very quick turnaround. That's why we've had to, really prep this thing. And the handful of people who have been working on it with me have been working really, really hard. When you see it, you'll know why. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited. I just don't want to ruin it.
Don't ruin it on their behalf. I just think I think people should know that they can see you on TSN. We've got a couple people who are TSN SDPN people. So it's you and Chris Johnson. So good company, I think. And,
you learn a lot at these places, right? Whether you're at the other network, whether you're at TSN or any other news outlet network that has been around for a really long time and takes this stuff very seriously. I mean, they really you learn fast, you learn a lot. And, I think maybe CJ may be able to speak to this, but you're always learning. I'm sure CJ's always learning,
Yeah, CJ, what he always says about TSN specifically is, and he's worked on both sides, and he worked for the Canadian Press as well. He said that it's just a really unbelievable team. There's a lot of support, and the idea is, instead of who's going to take credit or whatever, it's about best idea wins. We work together as a team. We get the best product out there. Everybody wins, and it's an amazing team.
Yeah, being a team player is something I obviously learned through racing, and having gone through all of that and having that as my career, kind of just say you take that same mentality with you into this. And for me, it's just easy to get into with everybody else because you're all working together to achieve the same goal. And I'm pretty easygoing to work with when it comes to all that. And I think for me, it was easy to do that. It just was I enjoy working with, people who are really passionate about stuff. I love that. It's some of my favorite things, and whatever I can do to help, whatever time of day that is that I need to do that, I don't care. I'll do it.
You are amazing about time of day. My schedule sometimes is all over the place. Your schedule sometimes all over the place. We have busy schedules, but what's great is that you and I kind of operate the same way. It's whenever it gets done, we have to get it done.
Yeah.
So I love that about you. Yeah. This is going to be. I'm very excited for this. I've never seen you so excited about a feature with TSN. So very excited. Cool. We'll see it tonight or see it tomorrow morning.
I'll make sure I send it to you, Adam. But thanks again for doing this, man. Thanks for taking the time, dude.
No worries, man. And have yourself a great day. We'll talk Monday.
Sounds good. Thanks, buddy.